What would actually happen if the United States and Israel entered a full-scale war with Iran? Not just a limited strike, not just rhetoric, but an open, sustained military conflict. This is not a theoretical debate anymore. Tensions in the Middle East continue to rise, military posturing is increasing, and alliances are shifting. Today, we are breaking down the strategic reality of a war with Iran, the military risks, the energy shock, the regional escalation, and the global consequences that could reshape international politics for decades. Because a war with Iran would not be quick. It would not be simple. And it would not stay contained. Iran is not Iraq in 2003. It is a nation of over 85 million people. It has decades of experience under sanctions. It has built asymmetric warfare capabilities specifically designed to counter stronger conventional militaries. Iran's geography alone makes invasion nearly impossible. Mountains, urban density, and hardened underground facilities complicate any air campaign. More importantly, Iran has spent years preparing for confrontation, not by matching Western air power, but by developing missile systems, drones, cyber units, and regional alliances. This is not a country that can be shocked into submission in a matter of days. If war began, it would likely start with air and missile strikes. The United States and Israel would attempt to target nuclear facilities, disable air defenses, strike missile bases, cripple command infrastructure. But Iran would respond. Its ballistic missile arsenal can reach Israel and U.S. bases in the region. Its drone capabilities have expanded significantly in recent years. Its naval forces could harass or disrupt shipping in the Persian Gulf. Then there's cyber warfare. Iran has invested heavily in cyber capabilities. Financial systems, energy infrastructure, and communication networks could all become targets. This would not remain a one-sided operation. Perhaps the most immediate global consequence would be energy disruption. Roughly 1/5 of the world's oil passes through the Strait of Hormuz. If Iran attempts to block or disrupt this choke point, oil prices could spike dramatically. Gasoline costs would surge. Inflation would worsen globally. Markets would react sharply. Energy markets are hypersensitive to Middle East instability. Even minor disruptions cause volatility. A prolonged disruption would send shockwaves through Europe, Asia, and North America. This is not just about geopolitics. It's about household economics worldwide. Iran does not operate alone. It maintains relationships with regional actors, including Hezbollah in Lebanon and allied groups across Iraq and Syria. A strike on Iran could trigger missile exchanges across Israel's northern border, attacks on U.S. bases in Iraq, expanded conflict zones. What begins as a bilateral confrontation could quickly become a multi-front regional war. A war with Iran would not unfold in a geopolitical vacuum. Russia and China maintain economic and strategic relationships with Tehran. While direct military intervention may be unlikely, diplomatic, economic, or material support could shift global alignments. NATO members may not agree on escalation. European nations reliant on Middle Eastern energy may push for de-escalation. The United Nations would face immediate pressure to intervene diplomatically. This conflict could accelerate the fragmentation of the current global order. The Middle East is deeply interconnected. Escalation rarely stays isolated. Beyond oil prices, broader economic effects would include stock market volatility, currency instability, rising defense spending, delayed global investment. Supply chains already strained by global instability would face new pressure. Inflation, already a concern in many economies, could intensify. History shows that prolonged regional wars increase fiscal deficits and strain domestic economies. War carries long-term economic consequences that outlast the fighting itself. Modern history offers cautionary examples. Conflicts in Iraq and Afghanistan demonstrate how quickly limited objectives can expand. Initial strikes can evolve into prolonged engagements. Political leadership changes, public opinion shifts, and long-term reconstruction costs often exceed original projections. Strategic overconfidence has historically led to unexpected outcomes. A war with Iran would involve far more complexity than past regional conflicts. Domestically, war reshapes politics. It can unify populations temporarily, but prolonged conflict often divides them. Internationally, it can strengthen hardliners and weaken moderates. Diplomatic channels close. Reconciliation becomes harder. Even if military objectives are achieved, political stability may deteriorate. The aftermath of conflict often proves more difficult than the conflict itself. A war with Iran is not just a military event. It is a chain reaction: military retaliation, energy disruption, regional escalation, economic shock, global political realignment. The real question is not who wins the first strike. The real question is what the world looks like afterward. Because once escalation begins, controlling it becomes exponentially harder. If you found this analysis valuable, consider subscribing for in-depth geopolitical breakdowns and long-form strategic discussions. Stay informed, stay analytical, and always question the long-term consequences of short-term decisions. Let's go deeper, because the most dangerous conflicts in modern history were not the ones that started with massive invasions. They were the ones that began with limited objectives: a targeted strike, a measured response, a short-term operation. If a war with Iran began, leaders might describe it as contained, strategic, necessary. But history shows us something important. Wars rarely unfold according to initial plans. The first week might involve airstrikes and missile exchanges. The first month might involve retaliation through proxies and cyber disruption. The first year could involve entrenched hostilities with no clear exit. And once national pride, political credibility, and military momentum become involved, backing down becomes harder than escalating. That is the escalation trap. Strategists call it commitment escalation. Once resources, lives, and credibility are invested, leaders face enormous pressure not to appear weak. If initial strikes fail to achieve objectives, more force is applied. If retaliation occurs, counter-retaliation follows. Each side justifies its actions as defensive. And gradually, the conflict expands beyond its original scope. A war with Iran could fall into exactly this pattern. Missile strikes lead to broader bombing campaigns. Cyber attacks lead to infrastructure retaliation. Proxy skirmishes lead to regional flare-ups. Soon, what began as deterrence transforms into prolonged confrontation. Modern wars are not fought only in the air or on the ground. They are fought in code. Iran has developed cyber capabilities that have previously targeted financial systems and infrastructure. In a full-scale conflict, cyber operations could aim at energy grids, banking systems, transportation networks, communications infrastructure. Even temporary disruption of these systems could create public panic. Imagine ATM networks going offline, airports experiencing system outages, fuel pipelines interrupted. Cyber warfare lowers the threshold of retaliation. It allows escalation without visible troop movement, and it creates uncertainty about attribution. That uncertainty increases instability. Iran has invested heavily in missile technology: short-range ballistic missiles, medium-range systems, precision-guided munitions. While air superiority may favor Western forces, missile saturation can overwhelm defenses. No missile shield is perfect. Even limited missile penetration can have psychological and strategic impact. Civilian populations under threat respond differently than distant observers. Public pressure grows rapidly when cities come under fire, and political leaders face demands for decisive retaliation. The Persian Gulf is narrow and crowded. Military vessels, commercial tankers, and regional fleets operate in close proximity. Iran has previously demonstrated the ability to harass shipping through fast attack craft and naval mines. A miscalculation at sea could trigger rapid escalation. Naval confrontations are uniquely dangerous because reaction times are short. A warning shot misinterpreted. A radar lock mistaken for attack preparation. A commercial vessel caught in crossfire. Even a limited maritime incident could spike oil prices overnight. Insurance premiums for shipping would rise. Global trade would feel immediate pressure. War is often discussed in terms of strategy and economics, but the human dimension is central. Urban populations are vulnerable in missile exchanges. Infrastructure damage affects hospitals, water systems, and food supply chains. Refugee flows strain neighboring countries. Humanitarian crises destabilize entire regions. And once displacement begins, it rarely resolves quickly. Conflicts in the Middle East have shown that refugee crises can reshape European politics and domestic debates for years. The humanitarian cost of war is not confined to the battlefield. It radiates outward. A key justification often cited in discussions of Iran involves nuclear development. Whether or not Iran seeks nuclear capability, one reality is clear. War accelerates nuclear incentives. When a state feels existentially threatened, deterrence becomes more attractive. Military confrontation may delay a program temporarily, but it can also strengthen the political argument for pursuing maximum deterrent capability. Strategic pressure sometimes produces the opposite of its intended effect. That paradox must be considered carefully. A war with Iran would reshape domestic politics. Initially, national unity may rise, but prolonged engagement historically produces division. Budget priorities shift toward defense. Social spending debates intensify. Public fatigue grows. Veteran care obligations expand. Political polarization can deepen if objectives remain unclear. Public opinion tends to support clear, short operations. It becomes volatile when timelines stretch indefinitely. Inside Iran, external military pressure often strengthens hardline factions. Nationalism intensifies during foreign confrontation. Moderate voices may lose influence. Political consolidation can occur under emergency conditions. This dynamic has appeared repeatedly throughout modern history. External pressure rarely produces internal liberalization in the short term. Instead, it produces unity against perceived external threat. Regional allies would face difficult decisions. Some may provide logistical support. Others may seek distance to avoid retaliation. Energy-dependent nations would push for de-escalation. Diplomatic coalitions could fracture. Global leadership credibility would be tested. International institutions would face pressure to mediate. But mediation becomes harder once missiles are in flight. Markets respond to uncertainty. War introduces extreme uncertainty. Investors move towards safe haven assets. Commodity volatility increases. Defense sector stocks may rise. Broader indices may fall. Currency fluctuations intensify. Central banks may delay policy decisions amid instability. War complicates monetary policy. The greatest risk is not immediate destruction. It is prolonged engagement. Short wars are rare. Most conflicts evolve unpredictably. Supply chains for military equipment expand. Recruitment cycles extend. Defense budgets grow. Strategic patience erodes. The longer a war lasts, the harder it becomes to define victory. Inflation expectations shift. Risk premiums increase. And long-term investment decisions are postponed. What would victory mean? Elimination of missile capabilities. Regime change. Negotiated settlement. Deterrence restoration. Clear objectives are critical in warfare. Ambiguity creates mission drift. Mission drift creates prolonged conflict. Prolonged conflict creates strategic fatigue. Without clearly defined and achievable objectives, escalation risks becoming self-perpetuating. We are living in a multipolar era. A war with Iran would not simply be a regional conflict. It would be interpreted globally as a signal. Allies would reassess commitments. Rivals would test boundaries elsewhere. Geopolitical competition in Eastern Europe and East Asia could intensify. Strategic distraction has ripple effects. Great power competition does not pause during regional wars. It adapts. Modern conflicts unfold in real time on digital platforms. Information spreads instantly. Misinformation spreads even faster. Narratives shape public perception. Psychological operations aim to influence morale. Civilian audiences become part of the information battlefield. Perception management becomes nearly as important as battlefield success. This dynamic complicates diplomacy.